Good morning Year 3 and welcome to Day 3. Today we're going to be learning to identify and name 2D shapes. First of all, here are the answers to yesterday's task. I'd be interested to know how many of you had worked out that the playing card and the sheet of paper had two flat surfaces. One on this side and one on this side. So I'd like you to have a look at this picture of a football pitch and pause the video. Count how many 2D, two-dimensional shapes can you see? So there are quite a few. We've got rectangle, and we've got different sizes of rectangles. We've got circles, and if you look at the line down the middle of the circle, it creates another shape. So we'll look at that in a bit more detail. Here we have a circle, and then the line down the middle creates two equal parts. Now if that line was down here, down this part of the circle, we wouldn't have equal parts. But if we're looking at it in equal parts, much like we do when we're looking at fractions, we can then say that this, which is the same as this part here, is half of a circle, and we call that a semicircle. And again, we've got our circle, which is then divided into four equal parts. Remember, that word equal is really important. And we know from our fraction knowledge that if we divide the circle into four equal parts, we would have 4 quarters. So one of them is a quarter circle. So I've made up little pictures or groups of shapes together. And this one is made up of 3 shapes. And the 3 shapes are, if we separate them, a rectangle, a semicircle, and a quarter circle. So I'd like you to have a look at this, pause the video in a second, and write down the shapes that make these pictures up. So we have a rectangle here, a square, and a semicircle. And on this one we have 2 quarter circles, a full circle, and a triangle. Now these 2 quarter circles have been pushed together and they then form a semicircle shape. But if we moved them apart, they would be quarter circles. What I'd like you to do is to try making some pictures of your own by putting the shapes together. Now my pictures were a bit boring. You might be able to come up with a picture that actually resembles something. Can you make a person? Can you make a house? Or even a city by putting these shapes together? And then maybe try counting how much of each shape you've used. We can also draw two-dimensional shapes onto dot paper, and it gives us a really good idea of how big they are if we want to copy them. So I'd like you to try having a go, if you have printed this out or you've got some dot paper, to carefully copy the shapes. Now you will need to look at how many dots join together to make this straight line. So it starts off here and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So you would start here and then go through 4 lines, and so on to draw each shape exactly as it is. And then you can maybe have a go at drawing some other shapes if you've got any space left on the dot paper. Being able to do this means that later on when we do maths higher up at school, we will use dot paper and square paper, as you'll see in a second, to help us in other areas of maths. So it's a good skill to practice doing this just now. And here we have the same idea on lines. And again, we need to make sure that we are crossing, sorry, not on lines, on squares. We have to make sure that we are crossing the correct number of squares. So here I can see we've gone along 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I was drawing that here, I would start my line and count along 6 squares and finish here. And then you also need to take note of how many it goes down and across. So again, have a go at copying the shapes and then seeing if you can draw any others if you've got the space. So today's task all about 2D shapes. I'd like you to find the semicircles and colour them red, and colour the quarter circles yellow. I would like you to draw some lines on these shapes to show which shapes they are made up of. So they are all made up of these shapes, but they've been coloured in. I'd like you to perhaps do a dotted line or a black line to show the individual shapes that these have been made up of. Draw a line to show which shape completes. This to make it a rectangle, and this to make a square and a circle. And then again, I'd like you to identify the two shapes that each of these is made from. And finally, I'd like you to transfer this shape onto square paper and this shape onto dot paper. And then if you've got any room, try to fill it up and draw your own shapes on the square and dot paper. And we'll go through that tomorrow.